So one thing I want to point out that's on this life cycle chart here are these things called paratenic hosts. And these are animals that you can also be infected from. These are animals, organisms that will pick up the rat lungworm, and it can be harbored in their tissue, and if we eat one of them, we could be infected that way. So what are they? Some of them planarians. In particular, this Platydemus maniquari, the New Guinea flatworm, which we have here. This is a predatory flatworm. It preys on slugs and snails. And these guys were really very infected in some of the schools that I looked at, particularly in the Kapoho area. Prawns and shrimp can pick up this disease. In Tahiti, a number of cases of this came from people eating a raw shrimp dish. In China, the same thing. They eat this dancing shrimp dish that's sort of like shrimp ceviche. It's not cooked, it's cooked with lemon juice, but that does not, it's acid, right? It doesn't kill the rat lungworm. Crabs can pick this up. We don't know if the ama crab, but possibly. And water monitor lizards and frogs. One of the guys that we work with at USDA APHIS over on the Big Island is doing a paratenic study on what other animals are harboring this. He's going to be presenting at HCC. He's been sending coqui frogs to our lab, or the tissue, not the frog itself, but tissue from coqui frogs to our lab, and they are coming up positive. Very positive. Yes?
So inside of us, they just can't make eggs inside?
Yeah, right. So far, they have not said, although there's a researcher in Australia who says that he believes they can reproduce, that, or they're moving toward that, to being able to reproduce in humans. At this point in time, it's not been documented. The only documentation of adult worms were, they were not reproducing females, but they were adult rat lungworms in the lungs of children. And whether it's because a child's immunity system is not built up strong enough yet, we don't know. But on the other hand, including my son's case, he had what they said was pneumonia that perforated the lung. A lot of people have lung complications with this. We've seen it over and over again where, something's going on with the lungs. And so, because there have not been a lot of deaths, we really, really don't know. And really what we feel about this disease is that a lot of literature came out in the 70s and 80s, and we're all saying the same thing that they said then. Well, our technology has changed hugely since 1970 and 80. And so really, this is, I look at Hawaii and I say, we are the perfect laboratory to be turning out the best research in the world on this, because I can go out and find infection any day of the week I want. Where if I went to Florida or Texas or something, I'd really have to search for it. We have cases after cases after cases. Why are we not learning anything from them? To me, that's tragic. These are painful. The pain these people go through that have this is horrendous. And why are we not learning from it? So I feel that this is a really rich field. This is where Hawaii could lead the nation. It could lead the world. It really could. And that's what I encourage. We've been encouraging Hawaii. Come on, man, let's not just depend on tourism. We could be something else. We could learn from this. So, yeah, there was a woman that died in Kona back in 2015, and the family asked for an autopsy, and they did not get one. We lost that information. We didn't learn from that death. We've had a child die. There's been deaths from this in Hawaii. There was a child that died in 2011 from Puna side. We didn't learn anything from it. And that's tragic. To me, that's tragic. So, I hope that this changes. And that's, again, where, the more information. I made this shirt a few years ago. It says rat lungworm disease, Hawaii's STD, slug snail transmitted disease. And it says here, let's talk about it. Because, you can't shove it under the rug. That's not going to solve anything. We got to talk about this. Yes? Cats, there's been a couple that vets on Hawaii Island think that possibly a cat got it. People will say, well, my cat's eating rats. You have to remember the infective stage is not in the rat. It's in the slug and snail host. And so cats, there's been a couple that had unusual behavior where they got really, it was a gentle cat, it was a domestic cat, and then, just when the doctor went to examine it, it just like went crazy and bit and all of that. And it causes a lot of pain generally, and so animals will, respond to that. But we don't see it that often in cats. Puppies a lot, because puppies will just gobble stuff up. And slugs and snails, especially the semi-slug, really likes to get into cat and dog food. I'll use that as bait sometimes. When I'm baiting a trap, I'll throw a little bit of cat food or dog food or something out, because it will draw them. But that's been a problem, and there's been a number of dogs that have gotten this. A really wonderful vet from Australia came over this spring. He came here and gave a talk on Hawaii Island, or here in Oahu, and one on Hawaii Island. But he says that the animals are sentinels. So in Sydney, this disease is in Sydney. I know a young man who got this, a really bad case of this there. He's treated a lot of dogs in particular from this, and he said they're sentinels. If you see your animals coming down with this, you know you've got rat lungworm in the area. So, you know, that he's been a great resource, really. Chickens, my sister had ducks and chickens, and her friends did. They don't seem to get it very often, but she did have ducks that would all of a sudden come up really lame, where they couldn't walk anymore, and she'd have to cage them for a while, and then they would recover. And so we think that, you know, that they are susceptible, but not as susceptible. Whether it's, we don't know why. We really don't. We don't know why pigs don't seem to get it. Pigs eat slugs and snails all the time. They don't seem to get it. Cows don't seem to get it. But again, this is, again, we don't know, and we could be knowing. You know, we've got universities here. We've got ag departments here. We could be learning a lot more about this. You know, this is where, like, getting the word out for Hawaii, instead of saying this is a shameful thing that we don't want to talk about, getting the word out. We got this problem. We need to look at it. You know, right now we're looking at you know, adult rat lungworms. We had to collect 10 grams of them for the CDC to try to work on our blood test diagnostic that we're doing. CDC offered to help. We went through the hearts and lungs of 545 rats that were captured in the Hilo area, and 94% of them had either current or previous infection. We're shipping it. You know, we need to be learning from it here instead of pretending it's not a big deal, because it is a big deal. It's a big deal for the rest of the country. It's a big deal for the rest of the world. And we could be doing a lot of work here, you know. So getting the word out that we need funding, you know, and when I went back to graduate school at the age of, I don't know, 60 or something like that, you know, and I wrote multiple, you know, applications for grants and that type of thing. To the EPA, I've just, you know, 5, 6, 7 applications for grant money. Well, I never heard of this. You know, I would get the research, was this really a problem? Well, are there enough stakeholders? It's because nobody had heard of it. So trying to get funding was really, really hard, because nobody knew that there was rat lungworm and that it was going on, in, you know, to the extent that it is in Hawaii. So, you know, that was where we turned to the state for money. We're asking the feds, and they're like saying, what? You know, and so it's like, well, let's ask the state for money. But getting the funding to do the proper research on this is really, really important. And so that's why, you know, it's no shame, no shame. This is just something that is here, no shame. But let's do something about it, and let's get the proper funding to really look at this well. So that's kind of where we're at right now.